welcome back to the PurlCast. I'm Jana with Knit Purl Together, and I am here with Anne from the fantastic podcast called I Thought I Knew How. Check her out on your podcast player of choice. I don't know whether that's iTunes. I don't even know all the podcast things except for iTunes.
Yeah, there's a million of them.
So welcome. I'm really glad you were able to spend some time with me this morning. We visited for quite a long time the other day, and it was a joy to visit with you. So
yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yes.
Thank you.
So tell us a little bit about your podcast.
So my podcast started about a year ago. It's called I Thought I Knew How because I decided at the end of last year that it would be a good idea to sign up for the Master Hand Knitter program. And as part of that, I'm discovering that I'm not as adept of a knitter as I thought I was.
I think we could all say that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm having to learn a lot of things that I thought I already knew how to do, but it also, the podcast sort of hit at a time in my life when there was a lot of sort of upheaval and oddities going on. So we actually lived in the Philippines as a family for nearly 9 years, and we decided to move back to the U.S. after that. So my kids grew up in the Philippines. Mm-hmm. And we spent almost a decade there ourselves. So coming back was like going through culture shock again.
Oh,
so,
I'm sure.
Yeah. So it's also, I thought I knew how to be an American, and turns out I didn't. It was very awkward and strange.
But in fairness, there's been a lot that's changed. We talked about that the other day. There's been a ton of things that have changed in the last decade.
Yeah, it's been a very dramatic, decade of social change and things going on and how people interact with each other. So we had to learn how to navigate that. And then the reason why we had moved back was because my mother was living in a nursing home and needed extra attention and care. Mm-hmm. And my father's aging as well. And so we decided to come back and help with that. And so we came back, ready to do that. And my mom died 4 months after we moved back. So it was sort of like I thought I knew how to do life. I thought I knew how to knit, like a lot of craziness and madness going on. And so I thought, hey, let's start a podcast and talk about it.
Well, I think there's some universal truth there. I mean, we all think we know things until you don't. And
yeah.
Whether that's, with raising kids or, you think you know everything until that you bring that baby home and then you're like,
yeah,
now what?
Yeah, everyone's a childcare expert until they have one of their own.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think knitting is similar. Show us your cup. I think I love that.
Don't pack a mug.
Yeah. Hold it up to the
Get it up close.
Oh, see, I wasn't sure what was around the bottom. Now I can see.
Yeah, it's flowers. And then on the inside, it's a no drama llama.
No drama llama.
Yeah.
Love that.
My daughter got this for me for Christmas last year.
And your shirt is fantastic.
Yeah, I got this at Purl Soho in New York City when I was there this summer.
That's great.
So yeah, I wore it special for the podcast.
I would buy that. I wonder if they have them online.
I think I've seen them online.
I'm going to look. If I find them, I'll put a link down below in the video description. But yeah. Cool. So
I'm not sure. I think Purl Soho sells them online.
Yeah, I'll go look.
They had a couple novelty t-shirts, novelty knitting t-shirts.
So you came back after being gone for many years and started this podcast. Now tell the viewers, if people don't already know, what is the Master Hand Knitter program?
So the Knitters Guild Association has a certification program that you can go through to be able to say that you're a master knitter. So there's 3 levels to it. Level 1, they expect you to take about a year. Mm-hmm. More than that. And from what I can
you're coming up on the end of that. The last quarter, maybe.
The second level takes a year and a half. They plan for, and then the third level is a 2-year project because you're for the third level you're actually designing a sweater and a hat, and one needs to be Fair Isle, the other one needs to be Erin, and you can decide which one is which, but you can imagine that's a very involved process to have to do. So you get the information from them, and actually my binder's right here. So this is the start of my binder, and you get the printouts from them. Oh, those are my page dividers. I didn't plan on this ahead of time.
It's okay. It's all right.
So you get your instructions, and they even tell you, like, go buy a 3-inch 3-ring binder, get plastic protectors, put these pages in, all this stuff. And you get all of your instructions and things, and you have like information on exactly the format that they want everything to be in.
Yeah, it's very detailed.
You end up with 19 swatches that you do. So you get the directions for the different swatches. And then I just have them all stuck in right here, the ones that I've done. But so the first, let's see if I can find swatch 1 real quick. So this is my first swatch here. So
okay, explain the green parts are where you measured from. That's your parameter, or your
So you do a garter stitch. You start with 2x2 rib, and then you knit garter stitch for a specific number of rows.
Okay.
I believe, not inches, but rows. You have to attach your tag. Certain kind of tag has to be attached a certain way, and then they show you how to measure gauge. So in order to measure gauge, you run a scrap yarn through the bumps vertically and through a stitch horizontally. And then you use those as your measuring points. And then you have to fill in a worksheet to precisely calculate the gauge and everything. And so this is my second swatch here.
So we're simulating sleeves here.
Yeah. And really, I think it's every swatch sort of progresses on the one before. So you had the garter stitch and 2x2 rib,
right? And
which can be challenging because this second stitch in the ribbing, second stitch in the ribbing can end up larger than the first stitch. So you have to figure out how to make sure they're the same size, and then you have to include the information on where you found that from 2 different sources.
Wow. And it can't just be because my grandma taught me.
Right. No, it has to be a written source. They allow a certain number of, I believe you can have 1 video source per technique, but no more than that. So you can't rely on YouTube. And then
it is very detailed. My sense of this is that you really get into why you're doing what you're doing and the anatomy of a stitch and how it all goes together. And it's very technical.
You're very hyper focused on your knitting. And it can get to the point, like, so this is the one I got stuck on forever. This is just seed stitch.
Don't say just seed stitch.
Wow. So this is seed stitch, and it's
look at you.
You have to be careful. Like, see, now on the video, I'm like, oh, look there's a gap there and there's a gap there. But I never noticed how gappy seed stitch can be. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the times designers will have you go down a needle size or 2 as you do seed stitch to eliminate those little natural gaps that can happen. But I think I knit this like 12 times.
Oh,
just
my word.
Because I'd get a few rows up and I'd be like, there's a gap. And then I have to go back and, just start it over because your tension is going to change and everything. So you end up having to do a sheet for each swatch where you list all of the techniques that were involved, the sources for those techniques, how to do them properly. And then you just put the swatch in the divider with that. And at the end of this level, the first level, you knit a mitten, and that's your final project.
For that level, right.
Yeah, and that gets set. You're not designing it. You're just knitting it from a pattern and sending it in. Sure. And then that goes into a box, and your full binder goes into a box and gets sent to a judge who goes through it and they will tell you everything that's not up to standard. So they say, don't worry about perfection. You're a hand knitter. It's not supposed to look like it came off a machine.
Right.
So they do allow some minor variation to happen because it's hand knitting, but they are looking for specific things. Right. And I don't know what those specific things are as far as making sure that everything's the way it should be. But then you'll get it back with comments and anything that you need to correct. And then you can send it back, and you can keep sending it back and forth until you get it right.
Right.
And then they will say, okay, you're level 1 now. And then you can go on to level 2.
Okay. So yeah, quite a process. So we'll put links to all that stuff down below if people are interested in, looking into that.
Arenda Holiday does, she's involved with the organization, and she actually does do YouTube videos to help you know, okay, with this watch, this is the technique we're looking for. Right. So those videos are a lot of help, but then you do have to go get in the books and figure out what you're going to use.
Well, and you have to write reports and stuff, and
the first level report is on taking care of knits and blocking. And I believe it works out to be something like 4 typed pages, and you cannot exceed the word count. You need to hit the word count.
So basically this is knitting college.
But you're pretty much teaching yourself. They tell you go learn this thing and demonstrate that you've learned it. So a lot of people actually, I live not too far from Webb's. Webb's is only about 45 minutes from my house, and they offer their own program to certify that you are a good knitter. I forget now what it's called. But I know people in this area who are doing the Master Knitter program who will go take the classes at Webb's first, or as they're doing it, as they need the skills, and then they'll, use that as their.
Well, and the other thing that I've heard Arenda Holiday say, Holiday, I'm not sure. My apologies, Arenda, if you ever watched this and I got it wrong. But one thing she did an interview with Suzanne Bryan on Suzanne's channel. Suzanne is a master knitter as well and has served on the judging committee for the association. And the two of them were saying that it's really helpful if you're considering doing the program to take the basics course first. And that's also a correspondence course that's offered through the Knitting Guild Association. So that's super helpful. And it kind of sounds like Webb's is doing their own version of the basics thing for that. Yeah. So we'll put the links all down below.
I agree with that.
So are you a little stalled out then, or?
I wish I had investigated more before I started, because I think I would have. The name Basics made me think, well, I'll have that, right?
Oh, I thought I knew how to do that.
But my understanding is they actually take you through a lot of the techniques that you will need for level 1. Right. So now I'm like, well, maybe I go back a little. And so many things that I just never noticed, and I don't even, I don't have the right kind of knitting around me right now, but just that the neck, when you're doing stockinette stitch, the next to the last stitch sometimes is bigger.
Right.
So how do you fix that? I was like, I never even noticed that was a thing before.
Yeah. And I think some of that can be mitigated with blocking, but some of it not. It's better to do it properly to begin with.
Yeah, well, now I see it all the time and it drives me nuts.
I know. So how did you learn to knit originally?
So my mother learned how to knit when I'm the youngest of 4, and my mother learned how to knit at the local high school, just in, adult education evening classes when my older brothers were young. So before I was even born. And I have this memory of my mother just constantly knitting. If she was sitting down, she was doing a craft of some sort. If she was sitting, if it wasn't knitting, it was cross stitch or crochet, but it was almost always knitting. So I honestly thought that she grew up knitting, but she got the bug older in life. And of course, my brothers had no interest in knitting at all. They were outdoorsy boys, digging ditches in the backyard and things like that. So she was so excited to have a daughter, and she was so thrilled when I was about 9 years old to teach me how to knit. But she forgot that I was basically a boy. I had grown up with my brothers digging ditches in the backyard.
You wanted to build forts.
Yeah, exactly. We had woods behind our house, and we had a fort. We had a fort down the road at my friend's house. You know, like we were out in the woods all the time. So she sat. The group for little girls at my church decided to ask my mom to come and show everyone how to knit, and I remember being there and just not comprehending what was happening. You know, it wasn't in my wheelhouse. My brain wouldn't process what was happening, and all the other girls were catching on and knitting, and I was just like, this literally makes no sense, you know, and just frustrated. And of course, I'm the daughter of the knitter. It was a huge disappointment for my mother. But she let me off. She eventually gave up and taught me how to crochet, and I took to crochet like a duck to water. I knit Afghan after Afghan for 10 years. I was just constantly, and she had a legendary yarn stash. So when I started crocheting, she gave me basically all of the remnant acrylic that she had in her stash. She was just like, here, this is yours now, you use it. And I started making Afghans and scarves just nonstop. And I still have them because they were acrylic, you know?
Right.
When I was probably 2021, I decided to go to Utah to do some summer classes at a different college. My college didn't offer summer classes, and I was a few credits behind. So I decided to go out west and do summer classes there. And before I left, I went to her and was like, well, let's do this again. Show me again how to do this. And it took at that point. And so that summer I spent just knitting odd rectangles. I would just pick, I took a bunch of the remnant yarn that I had with me and would just knit whatever until that ball was gone. And then at the end of it, I was able to mostly piece it together. And if it didn't quite fit, I would like crochet to make it fit. And I had this massive, ugly Afghan that was like whatever colors, whatever size yarn, and I had that for years and years. And finally, I think I gave it away to a drive, a homeless drive, and just, we didn't have room in the house anymore kind of thing. But I still didn't enjoy it.
You knit a massive Tetris blanket and still didn't like it?
I still didn't like it. It was just how I killed time that summer.
Right.
So when I had my first daughter, I had been a teacher as a 4th grade teacher, and I retired when I had kids. So there was a week-long show on PBS that was run by a woman who owned a yarn shop in Los Angeles.
Okay.
And I can't remember what it was called, and I can't remember what her shop was called. But it was knitting. She went through all the steps of knitting a baby sweater in the course of the week.
Okay.
And it taught you all the skills you needed to know along the way. And I didn't even knit the baby sweater. I just watched the show, like while I was nursing, or, my daughter would be asleep on me and I'd be stuck on the couch. And I saw every episode and I was like, oh, knitting, I could do that. That was sort of the thing that got me knitting again. And at that point, like, I was designing crochet patterns. I was posting things to crochet me, and I was like, maybe I should like do my own website. I'd had an offer to be part of a book at that point. So I was like, really crochet, Yeah. And then that show was just like, oh, maybe I'll try knitting again. And from then on, almost immediately, I dropped crochet and just went straight into knitting. And I still do a couple crochet projects a year, and I do love it. Every time I do it, it feels very comfortable to do. But I think I just spent so long crocheting that now I'm like catching up, learning different knitting techniques and stuff.
Right. Wow, that's awesome. I've never enjoyed crochet. I mean, I sort of can do it, but yeah, not my jam. I don't understand it. In the way that you didn't get knitting when you were a child, I don't get, I mean, I kind of understand it, but I don't understand the construction or the anatomy of it in the same way that I understand knitting.
Yeah. And
it's like a foreign language where I could speak Spanish enough to say that I need to drink water and use the restroom. That's about it.
Right.
So crochet is like a foreign language for me where I can get by with doing a border or an edge, but not my jam. No.
Yeah. And see, as a teacher, that experience really helped me with some of my students who struggled to understand, like, it's not that they don't want to get it.
Right.
The connections just aren't being made. And so, as a teacher, I'd use that to remind myself sometimes, okay, well, we need to break it down more and help.
You were about that same age. You were third or fourth grade when you experienced that.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, even as you say, like with foreign language too, I was a religion major for my undergraduate degree, and I had to take biblical Hebrew. And that was like, I don't get it. Again, going through that again, but that helped me with my kids who had learning disabilities and dyslexia and stuff. It's like, they just don't, it's a totally
not processing. And so now the knitting is kind of taken over a little bit. So what are some of your like favorite things to knit? Like you mentioned Fair Isle's kind of your thing right now.
That's my current obsession.
Okay.
And the first time I knit Fair Isle was not this past summer, but the summer before. And I got about that far into a scarf and I thought, oh, this is really bad. And I don't know what I'm doing. And so I put it down. It just went down into the basement the other day. Actually, I had to make room. So all my unfinished stuff went into a container and went down in the basement. This spring, actually, I heard about this pattern that we'll talk about in a little bit. But that I wanted to help promote this charity pattern that was a Fair Isle pattern. And so I thought, okay, well, obviously I'm going to have to knit it if I'm going to help promote this thing. So I sat down and knit this hat. So it's not even, it's maybe been 6 months that I've been knitting Fair Isle, and I'm absolutely obsessed with it now.
We're gonna get there, but before we do, I want you to kind of explain to me, because I have a very cursory understanding of exactly what is Fair Isle, because it's not all color work, not all stranded color work is Fair Isle. And so that's what I want to understand that, but I want our viewers to understand that as well. How would one define, what is the definition of Fair Isle?
So I'll use this as an explanation here. So this is a Shwook hat. This was designed by Hazel Tindall for Shwook, and it stands for Shetland wool week, right? So Shwook. That's how she named it. So this is a traditional Fair Isle pattern. Okay. So let me see. I'm like looking at it from a weird angle. I'm like looking there, but it's right here.
I know.
So this is very traditional Fair Isle. And obviously there's modern takes on Fair Isle and things too, but very traditional Fair Isle. You typically do not have more than 5 stitches of one color in a row. This pattern here is called an oxo pattern.
Oh, okay.
So you have a round shape pattern, an X pattern, and another round shape pattern, and they fit together. So you can see how they fill in that space between the O patterns, so you don't have those really long runs. Okay. And then you also have patterns called Piri patterns. Piri means little. So you have little patterns that can be used to fill in the rows between your bigger patterns. And you can fit in, if you need to make something longer or shorter, you can add or subtract Piri patterns. It's often easier to do that than it would be to do one of your main motif patterns.
Right.
So with Fair Isle knitting, you only use 2 colors per row.
Right.
You can see I have a lot of different colors in this, but here I just have red and white, and here I just have the blue and the gray.
Yeah, you're not using, so you may have 5 or 7 or more colors in a piece in a sweater, for example, but you're not working with more than 2 on the same row.
Right. So it looks complicated,
but maybe
you're only ever having to hold 2 colors.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah. So
that's beautiful.
typically,
can you hold it so I can see that? I just love how things decrease to the crown. That's just,
isn't this a gorgeous crown?
Fantastic.
I love this crown.
And
So
I love the other one that you're going to show us in a minute too.
Yeah. So this is one of the last ones that I knit. So this one's in pretty good shape. I did pretty well on this one.
I think it looks amazing.
I'm pretty proud of this one. And this is a free pattern.
Okay. And that's from Harriet Middleton or Hazel?
Hazel Tindall. So this was the
world's fastest knitter.
Yeah, she's a sweetheart too.
Yeah.
This is the first of the Wool Week hats.
Okay.
So Shetland Wool Week happens the last weekend of every September into October. And every year they have an official hat pattern for everybody to knit and wear to the event. And Kate Davies actually was the patron a few times before this official one. And she sort of came up with some patterns before, but it wasn't like an official Wool Week ones. So there's 6 official, and then there's a few other by Kate Davies also.
I want to interrupt you to point viewers again to your podcast, because you have some fantastic episodes of your experience at Wool Week over at IthoughtIknewHow.familypodcast.com. Go check out all of Anne's interviews with Harriet Middleton, who is the designer of the pattern we're fixing to talk about. And also you have an interview with Hazel Tindall, which all of your interviews I found delightful. And then your experiences of Shetland Wool Week that just happened, last month. And so you guys got to go check that out. Links are in down below, but really go. It's fantastic. If you just need to go for a walk or go for a drive, you need to be uninterrupted and carve out some time for yourself, because it's a treat for sure.
Thank you. Yeah, they were wonderful people to interview too. It's really fun.
I'm so envious that it's amazing you got to go and spent that time there with those amazing
women. Come back with me next year. Let's do it.
I'd love to. Oh, yeah, I might have to start saving for that. Yeah.
It's great. It's amazing to be there. They said they had about 1,000 people this last year. They had 1,000 people signed up for classes. So, and then a lot of people, there were more people who came just hoping to buy tickets from people for the classes after, but they don't have a record.
So are there like knitting scalpers out there? I'm just visualizing I've got my knitting bag, but I don't have time for this class. So they're like scalping.
Right. Steeking 120, steeking 120.
Oh my God.
They have, inevitably there's people who overbook, or they get sick and can't come, or they're just tired that day. So there is they call it the hub, and this last year it was a room in the museum that was all set up with cozy chairs and things. And that's the gathering place. And they have a giant board that's looking for and selling.
Okay.
And you can just put your notice up there, and people make the connection there.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Seriously though, you have to go check out Anne's podcast. I'm going to listen to some of the interviews again. That's how I thought they were so great. And I've recently started walking again now that the weather's cooler, because I prefer cooler weather. And it's just a great thing to listen to while I'm going along, It's lovely. So
I'm glad you like it.
Tell us about the other pattern and what we're going to do.
Okay. So we are going to
get ready to morph into that.
Let's morph. We are going to have a knit along. You and I and all of our listeners. I'm very excited about this actually, because I've really been I've been promoting other people's knit alongs for this pattern, but I haven't actually done my own.
We're doing it.
We're doing it. So I started my podcast in January, and the July before that, I had been to Shetland just as a tourist. And just like maybe 3 or 4 days after my first episode came out, I saw on Facebook that this charity had started called the Shetland MRI Scanner Appeal. And their goal was to raise, at that point, £2 million to buy an MRI scanner for Shetland, because right now there is no MRI scanner. Anyone who lives on Shetland who needs an MRI, whether it's, you know, after treatment or an emergency or whatever, they have to go to the mainland, which by ferry is, it can be 12 to 16 hours on the North Sea, which is not a smooth ride. Or a flight or helicopter, you know, however they're going to get them there. But it is an ordeal for them to have to get there. So it's something like 600 trips every year where people are having to make that trip.
Yeah, the Shetland Islands are like north and a little bit east of mainland Scotland.
Right.
And so Anne's talking about people having, you know, if you needed an MRI or because of any kind of an accident or a seizure or anything or a treatment, like you mentioned, an overnight ferry ride from the Shetland Islands to Scotland in the North Sea, potentially in the winter. I mean, that can be a life-threatening issue.
Well, you think about it, like there was a child who fell out of a tree or off a fence or something. And so the mom had to, you think about it, they had to leave their other kids and take their one kid down. Of course, the father's home. He doesn't know what's going on. She's there alone. She doesn't have the support that she emotionally needs as she's going through this, you know, and then having to arrange childcare because the father can't just stay home. You know, it's not just the trip. It's all the other stuff that goes on because of the trip. So
it's crazy. And so it's definitely a needed thing. And so this fundraiser, the Shetland MRI Scanner Appeal, that's the agency that's raising money to, they need enough money to get a MRI machine.
Right.
At least in one location in the Shetland Islands.
Yeah. So there is the hospital there in Lerwick that would host it, and the cost of sending everybody to Aberdeen would cover the cost of running the MRI and having the people there to staff it and everything. But then the scans would just happen there. They would still be sent to the mainland and be analyzed by the same experts, but it would just save everybody the hassle and the trip of having
so much time and travel. And the thing is I have read that Shetland has good internet.
Yeah, I didn't have a problem with it the whole time. I'd be out in the middle of nowhere and have LTE on my phone.
Right. They can digitally send those scans to be read.
Yeah.
So mitigating that travel would save so much stress and time. Absolutely. So the knit along that you and I are hosting is to help that.
Right. So there was a woman named Harriet Middleton who started knitting from her stash and just selling it locally. She needed to go get MRI scans herself. So this was sort of her way of giving back, was to raise funds this way. But people started, she said the interview's great. You got to go back and listen to it.
It's fantastic.
Yeah. She's wonderful. But she would go to sell the knitwear she'd made, and people would bring her yarn and say, here's more to help. So she got her sister-in-law involved, and then her sister-in-law was like, we need more people. We're never going to knit through this yarn. Right. So they started the MRI Maakers, which is a knitting group. They get together every other Thursday, something like that, and they knit together and they bring in finished items. And
they have a website as well. Maker means?
It's a knitter. So that's the local word for knitter. So MRIMaakers.com. Uh-huh. And someone suggested to her, you know, Wool Week does a hat. You should do a hat, and then you can sell the pattern. And I think they said they thought they'd sell maybe 200 copies of the pattern.
Yeah, I remember Harriet saying in one of your interviews that she thought, it would be great if she made, you know, a few £100 for the scanner appeal. For the fundraiser. And then,
so far they're approaching £70,000 now raised.
And her pattern is fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. And
so this is the Harriet's hat. And this is
beautiful.
The first Fair Isle project I knit. So like the gauge is a little off and it's a little long, but
it's beautiful.
I love it. It's my first one. So
Oh, show us the crown. Show us the crown. I just
so
love how everything.
Traditional pattern as well. So there's the crown, the colors. And so you have the star and you have your Peary patterns here. And it was really an education in Fair Isle, just in this hat, because I never heard of this. This is called corrugated rib. Mm-hmm. So the pearls are worked in the blue and the knits are worked in the colors that will be in the hat.
Sure.
And then, just I learned so much on this. So this came out, I want to say in May.
It's so lovely.
And this was the first thing I knit. I had already started talking about the MRI scanner appeal, just trying to get people to go do donations. But when I heard about the hat pattern, I was like, well.
And so if people want to download the hat pattern, then all the money goes to the appeal.
Yeah, so you buy it from the MRI Maakers website, but that e-commerce site or whatever is connected directly to the appeal.
Right. So
it
all of
go to the Maakers, it goes right to the donation thing. So and all of it, as you said. So
yeah, the point of this is that Harriet has done generously put together this pattern. And it was she's so charming. She's like, well, I don't know how to write anything down. We don't do that.
Yeah.
So her son helped her do the PDF and all that, right?
He does not knit. Yeah.
Her son does not.
He does not knit. So her son had to go through and look at it as a graph and transfer this, to graph and talk to her about the different steps in between and have her explain it to him so that he could put it. So, I mean, talk about learning how to, do the professional. I'm like, you're going to qualify as a tech editor without ever having knit anything.
Now, I saw a Facebook video though where he was knitting one. He made one.
So
and he's had to wind around, and it probably took forever. But kudos to Billy for doing it, right?
Yeah, and he did it on his own. He went to YouTube. Some of the Maakers challenged him to knit his own hat. So he went to YouTube and did it on his oon, found out how to do it. I was like, your mom could do, but she's like, no. So, and then he had people sponsoring him to do it. So that was another fundraiser they did, was he had sponsors to knit the hat. And then they actually raffled it off as a prize for, at their MRI Maakers event during Wool Week. So yeah, but he's like, that's it now. I'm done.
It's been delightful to watch that on social media, because I saw the video of him doing the last little bit,
Yeah.
So we'll put all the links for the MRI Maakers and all their social media stuff. We'll put all that down below. And it's just really heartwarming to consider being a part of that. And so Anne and I are going to host a knit along. The proceeds, you'll buy the pattern directly from the MRI Maakers, so all of the money goes to the Shetland appeal. And then when I say buy the patterns, plural, there is more than the hat.
There is more. So I have some of the things. I don't have all of the things. But so the second pattern she made was a reversible headband.
Oh, so it's so beautiful.
This is the outside, but you can flip it and you have the inside. So you can wear it either way. So you actually knit this as a long tube and then connect the starting end and the finishing end to the thing to each other to do the ends. And the fun thing about this one is if you don't want to, you don't have to weave in any ends except for your starting and ending one, because one of the things I learned while I was in Shetland is that if it's not going to be exposed, if the ends aren't going to be exposed, a lot of the times they'll just do a square knot with one more knot on top and just snip it close. So you're welcome to weave in the ends, but you don't have to, because it will be folded over and sewn shut.
Okay.
So if you hate weaving in ends,
that's an option
for you.
Right.
And then they also have mittens. So this is
amazing. That's beautiful. Oh my word.
Yeah.
And all of these you can knit them in whatever colors you like. These are the colors that are the corresponding colors to the Shetland MRI Appeal Scanner logo.
That's right. Yeah, this is the logo colors, and that's why she picked these colors.
But if you go on Ravelry and look at all the projects, there's some fantastic ideas of other color schemes that people have used, and that's perfectly fine too.
Yeah, or if you go to Instagram and do the hashtag Harriet's hat, you'll see tons and tons of different color combinations.
I'm totally going to write that down because I'll forget.
People have gotten very creative with them. And then, so there's a local yarn producer here called Morehouse Merino. Mm-hmm. And okay, I have another. So these are, well, I'll get to those. Morehouse Merino has hosted Harriet's Hat Knit Along as well. So these are with some of the Morehouse colors. I did this one. Yeah. And then I also wanted to try just doing a 2-color hat.
You've been busy. Oh my word.
I've knit a lot of these.
That's fantastic.
I told you I am obsessed with Fair Isle right now. This is the 2-color version that I did with the Morehouse Merino. And this one, my first hat ended up long. You can see how much longer it is.
That's all right.
But it sort of hangs off the back a little bit, and it's fine. I like it. But I wanted this one to fit a little closer, so I just left off some of the plain rows between the patterns.
Okay.
But with this one, anything that was a pattern stitch, I did in the white, and anything that was a background stitch, no matter what the color, just became blackberry, and that's how that worked out.
So just to be clear, because we haven't really specified this, all of these are knitted with like fingering weight, correct?
Fingering weight, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and then these are the fingerless gloves. Mm-hmm. Now I made mine a little different because so that's the fingerless glove. The pattern actually calls for making just a plain finger base. Uh-huh. But I don't like
the actual little tubes for
little tubes for the fingers, but I don't actually like the feeling of that, so I just did the corrugated rib at the top again. But this pattern involves a Fair Isle cuff. So you can see you actually start knitting it down here, and I'm just gonna fight it for a second. So you start knitting it here, and you knit this far, and then you flip your knitting through your DPNs, so it's facing the other way, and then you start knitting you knit your ribbing here, and then you just keep that as your right side, so that becomes, all of this becomes your right side, and the cuff you started with was your wrong side. But now you can flip that up, and it hides the ribbing, and you get a little bit more Fair Isle design there.
That's fantastic. That's brilliant.
Yeah, it's genius. I took a class on that at Wool Week, and I was like, that's brilliant.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
So there's also proper gloves. I have not knit those yet. And there is a cowl. Now the cowl is an advanced project.
Yes.
And I don't have a picture. Maybe you can find a picture and just put it up here right now. But I'm working on a 2-color version of the cowl right now.
That's beautiful.
So that's a little more than halfway on the first side. And it's the same sort of idea as the headband, where it's going to be reversible. So you'll knit a very long tube, you'll fold it back on itself, but you will have to steek that one. So
for viewers that might not know, explain what that means.
Okay, so you're going to knit the whole thing in the round, and then you'll have 14 stitches going up the entire tube, and you will cut halfway between those stitches.
With an actual pair of scissors.
With an actual pair of scissors. So if you're going to do that, you should be aware beforehand. You're going to cut your knitting, and I would recommend that you pick a traditional Shetland yarn to do the cowl, because when you cut it, it's grippy enough of a yarn that it won't give you any grief. It will
hold its shape, and it will stick together and hold itself. It's not just going to dissolve into a puddle.
Right. And then you just fold it back on itself and do like a whip stitch to anchor it.
Or the technique that you will show us.
Yeah. Or you could do the crochet version where anyway, we can get into the details of this eventually. The one thing I have not done is machine sewing to protect the steek. So really, if you're going to do the cowl, I would recommend you find like Jamison's at Smith, Jamison's of Shetland, Uradale yarn, like a traditional Shetland yarn
we'll put some links down below for that.
Yeah.
And I will pause on that note and say that I am working on a source for traditional Shetland yarn that is a yarn store here in the States. And that's in the works, and so I'm not going to say too much about it at this point. But by the time the knit-along begins on January 1st, we will hopefully have that ironed out. So watch our social media for links to that and places where you will be at sources for you to get the traditional Shetland wool if you choose to.
Yes. Yeah. So we'll have that US source. There is a source in the UK that will ship also. And then we can just recommend a few other.
Yeah. We'll have a list for you on the Ravelry page, as well as, I'm sure we'll have a list for videos that we're doing and things like that. Amazing. I'm so excited. That's just lovely. That's going to be a super educational thing for me as well. So what I want to verify, what I kind of want to clarify though, not verify, what I want to clarify for viewers is that we're hosting a knit-along. In the past, I've done a couple of different types of knit-alongs where when we have a paid pattern, we're not going to be going through the pattern row by row, step by step, because out of respect for the designers, we don't want people to be able to knit the object just by watching the videos. You need to buy the pattern. That's the whole point of this, is to support the MRI fundraiser. So you have to buy the pattern. Between Anne and I, we have a list of technique videos that we're going to tag team what we're comfortable with. Like, clearly she'll be doing the steeking part with the cutting. My mother has done that. I have not. But anyway, so we will tag team those, watch our channels so we'll have technique videos to help you along. We'll have pattern support. We'll, on the Ravelry board, we will be talking back and forth. We'll talk about prizes. There'll be prizes.
There'll be prizes. Yay. We're going to have cast on prizes. So the cast on prize will be another pattern.
Yay.
So we've talked to the Shetland MRI, we talked to the MRI Maakers, and they have agreed to give us some download codes. So if you are like, well, I want to do a hat and a mitten set or something, then buy the one and maybe you'll win a cast on prize that you'll be able to use for the thing, or just buy both anyway. That's okay too. Sure. So our cast on prizes will be additional copies of the MRI Maker patterns. And then we're going to have progress prizes. That's a little hard to say.
Yes.
And I make stitch markers as well. I do have one set right here.
I'm excited about this. I'm a little bit of a stitch marker junkie. I don't have very many, but I'm starting to build my collection.
So these are my stitch markers that people will be able to win. And then actually, I did do some of yours yesterday. I threw them in the box. Hold on. I don't have the business cards to put them on yet, so it might be hard to see them. But these are the ones for...
Oh, put your hand behind.
There you go.
Yay!
Oh, so those will be the Purl Two Together one, or the Purl Together ones.
Oh, I'm excited.
And really, I'm going to make enough so that whoever wins that week, there we go. Whoever wins that week, you'll get a set in my colors and a set in Jana's colors.
Yay!
So
we're going to have progress prizes. And then
we have a big prize that will be winnable by one of the people who finishes. So that'll our finishing prize. And I'm putting a box together and sending it. And then when it's all at Jana's house, she's going to take a picture of that. So you'll get to see all the yarn and materials and things that end up. So
basically the prize bundle at the end for the finishers will be, it'll be good. I'm just saying. There'll be a project bag, a notions bag, whatever Ann and I gather up to throw in there as far as yarn.
I can show what I'm sending so far. Should I do that?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Look at my classy plastic bag. So I have some tea that I'm including.
Oh.
These are little packets of maple tea and cranberry tea that will be going. That was leftover. I took little thank you presents to the people I interviewed on Shetland, and those are my leftover things. I have this Knitter's Pride, the glare. Knitter's Pride rainbow row counter ring. I'm trying to
those are cool.
There you go.
Yeah, and that looks like size 9. It says, no, those are really cool. I have one. Here, I'll show I have one. See how there's the numbers, and you turn it, and it's right there, or you can wear it on your thumb. Those are handy. I have 2 of these.
And then I have 2 pom-poms here that I'm throwing in because they go very well with the 4 balls of Bella Cash that I'm going to send along also. See, can we get that?
Tell us about that.
So this is, I'm trying to get it so it's
we
okay. Yeah. So this is 60% fine merino superwash wool, 30% nylon, and 10% cashmere, and it's about a fingering weight, I would say, like sock style. It's very soft. I love it, and there's 4 balls of that. So you could easily do a scarf, maybe even a shawl, or you could do a hat and a scarf
for sure,
and have 2 pom-poms to go on top of it. So that's what I have so far in my box. And I'm not going to make it to the post office today before it closes, so something else might end up in there too. So
Ann's going to send that to me, and then I'm going to gather up everything that I have to contribute, like I said, which will be a project bag. I'll show you. It may or may not be this same fabric, probably may or may not. I have a few fabric choices. Now, I want you to know that these were handmade by our regular podcast co-hosts. Lindsay and Jill made these. These are the Japanese knot fabric where it goes in like this, right? And they're very good quality. They're lined, okay?
You know what I love about those is there's nothing to get caught on your knitting.
No, there's no zippers, no.
Yeah.
So, and then inside will be a little Notions bag. You guys, if you're a regular subscriber, you've seen those before. The Notions bags that I have that will correspond with that is a matching solid color, similar to this in style, but a solid color. But they're zippered, and the tabs they're very nice. So project bag, Notions bag, and I have some other little tidbit things that I'm going to gather up to throw in as well. So it will be quite a bundle. I'm just saying.
Yeah. Oh, and stitch markers. The winner will get a set of each of the stitch markers also. Yeah. I'm making a lot of stitch markers right now.
You are. So in order to be eligible to win the bundle at the end of the knit along, which will be at the end of January, you'll need to post your finished Harriet's pattern.
Mm-hmm. So we have a few extra people who have contacted us who want to provide some prizes. And the way we've decided we're going to do that is at the end of the knit along, we will have some other categories and award those prizes to people in those categories. So maybe best use of color, most projects finished, things like that. But Ashcroft Makers has offered us a kit worth of yarn to do any of the smaller projects. So it would be enough to do a hat, headband, the gloves, any of the hand covering things. It wouldn't be enough for a cowl, but it would be enough to do that in a combination of her colors. Another person who has offered us some prizes is Merrily by Design. You can find her on Ravelry. Mm-hmm. So she has a couple of hat patterns. This is one of them. This is her Sea Pinks hat, inspired by Shetland. Sea pinks are these little flowers that grow along the coast, right, in very northern rocky areas. Mm-hmm. And it has, instead of like a pom-pom, she designed these little tassels that look like the sea pink flowers.
That's so cute.
So it's very, very cute. I get lots of compliments. People stop me and take pictures of this hat when I wear it.
Wow. Show us the crown. I love to see the top.
Yeah.
I'm
Okay.
always interested in how they take the pattern in
How they decrease it down. So she did it with hearts this time.
That's
So it's lovely. I just love this hat.
That's really smart.
And she has another hat. I can't think of the name right now, but it has this heart motif in bands going down it. So those are the two pay patterns that she has up right now. She does have other Christmas ornament patterns up that are free.
Well, so, and I'm going to draw attention to that as well, because we are starting next week. Well, when this airs, it'll be the week, Thanksgiving week. We're beginning our Christmas ornament knit along. So join us for that. And Merrily by Design on Ravelry has a couple of free Christmas ornament patterns that are fantastic. And they're based on they've been adapted from Shetland Wool Week beanie patterns.
Yeah.
So
they're beautiful.
They are fantastic. So head on over there and check out her Christmas bauble patterns if you want to kind of get some Fair Isle practice in before we start this.
That's right.
What a great way to kick off the new year. This is going to begin.
Yeah, I'm really excited.
January 1st.
January 1st, January 31st. It's going to be a party the whole month long.
Okay, so the way we're going to run the knit along is it'll be over on the Purl Together Ravelry group. There'll be sticky threads at the top of the group, so it's going to be super easy to find. We'll have a thread that's all about, here's the chatter thread where you ask your questions, blah, 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 all the things. But the giveaway threads will be very specific so that we can keep it organized. The giveaway, you'll want to post your work in progress photos, and it will not be a chatter thread. But in addition to posting your photo of your work in progress in the Ravelry group, there will be a link at the top of the thread to go to a Rafflecopter widget that will be set up on a separate site at Rafflecopter. So it's a giveaway. It's basically a fancy random number generator where there'll be a picture of whatever we're giving away, and you'll have an opportunity to have more than one entry depending on what you want to do. Obviously, posting a photo in the Ravelry group will be a requirement, and we'll verify that. But then you'll have the opportunity to gain extra entries by following Ann and I on various social media, our Facebook groups, and so forth. And you can sign up for our emails, and that gets you extra entries. You'll also have extra entries for following like the MRI Maakers. And, because of the main point of all of this is to raise money for the Shetland MRI appeal.
Exactly.
So we're going to keep the focus there as much as possible. So there'll be links. It will all become clear.
It'll all make sense, I promise.
To us all. So, and then the grand prize at the end will be the big bundle that we're putting together, but also these other designers. So patterns and yarn from these other places as well. So it's going to be a party.
Yeah. And if anyone else out there is a fiber related artist maker and you would like to contribute a prize as well, just let us know.
Yep. And the other thing too is that the other point that I really want to make is this is a very worthy cause. And even if Fair Isle is not your jam, go check out their website, and they accept PayPal. You can donate even if Fair Isle is not your thing.
Yeah, well, and they do list, I'm not sure if anything's listed right now because there's a lot of craft fairs going on at the moment on Shetland, but they do put the finished items that the Maakers have made on their website for people to purchase. So if you like the hat, but you are deathly afraid of Fair Isle for some reason, you can just buy one directly from them. But I will say, I was also deathly afraid of Fair Isle before I started doing all of this. And I have, can I just, okay.
Wow.
So, all of that is Fair Isle knitting that I've done in the last 7 months or something, because once it clicks for you, it's magic, it's opening a new world in your knitting. So I would encourage you, you're going to have a lot of support with this knit along.
We'll be here.
Yeah, we will be here for you.
And I've done some Fair Isle. We've done a little Norwegian Star colorwork hat last January. I mean, I've done a little bit of color work here and there, but I've never done some of the techniques that Anne is going to help us learn.
Right. So, fingers crossed.
But they're just beautiful, and it's clearly a worthy cause. So everybody needs to just head on over to the MRI Maakers.com. I didn't know if it's .com or .org. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. We'll put all the links down below, not to worry. But we wanted to do this podcast now to give you plenty of time to gather the yarn that you'll need. I will make an announcement if we have some sources locally or in the States. For now, be thinking about what fingering weight, 100% wool. I would not suggest acrylic for this.
No.
Ew.
Not even, I wouldn't even go with a partial acrylic, to be honest.
No.
Well,
here's why I don't think so. Because we want the grippiness of natural wool. You want the Fair Isle.
It helps it stay in place.
Yes. You want the grippiness of natural wool. I would not suggest acrylic or acrylic blends. This is going to be one of those, let's be purist about it.
Right.
And use the proper materials for the proper project.
And I will say also that with the like Jameson and Smith, Jamesons of Shetland, their yarn comes in a 25-gram ball. And for the hat, you actually get enough in all those colors. You get enough to do 2 hats.
Okay, so if I bought, there's 6 colors. So if I bought one 25-gram ball of all 6 colors, I would have enough to make 2 hats.
You will have enough to make 2 hats. The headband takes a little bit more. I can't remember if it's the main color or the white.
But you have that whole circumference and you're turning it over. So that makes sense that it takes more.
So this one, this one you won't be able to get 2 full ones, but 1 ball of each color is plenty to do the headband. And then also like with the gloves, they haven't quite figured it out with all the other patterns.
You could easily do one ball of each color would easily get you the headband and then some Christmas balls.
Yeah, easily.
Or you could probably make a baby hat or a child's hat.
Yeah, if you want to scale it down.
Right. And so, again, we'll have technique videos out to help you. We're not going to go through it row by row because you need to buy the pattern.
No, we're just going to do the techniques, not the pattern.
But if Fair Isle is not your jam, consider going to donate anyway.
Yeah. So the patterns are 4 pounds each, which works out to be about $5, $5.25. So it shifts daily, but that's roughly what you pay for it. And for a charity pattern, I think that's really extremely reasonable, actually.
Well, it is, and there's a lot to it. Yeah. So, yay. So I'm really excited. All right. Join us January 1st. And in the meantime, you can be asking questions in Anne's Facebook group as well as mine. And if I don't know the answer, I'll get with her about it. She has a Ravelry group as well. We'll put all the links to all the social media places down below. So be sure to ask questions if you don't get it or if it's all just a lot.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Anne, from I Thought I Knew How familypodcast.com. Is that right? Okay.
Yes, family podcasts is plural. Yeah.
I'll put links down below. But thanks for joining me and explaining all the things. You had a wonderful... I want to go to Shetland now.
I think everybody should go to Shetland. Not necessarily during Shetland Wool Week. It's a busy time of year, but it's a beautiful place. Like I said, the first time I was there was in July. And most of the teachers who teach at Shetland Wool Week are local. So you will find that you can find ways to get into their classes if you're there in the summer or the spring or whenever. So it's a place to visit.
Thanks for joining us and explaining all the things, and we'll look forward to Cast On.
I'm very excited about it. I look forward to meeting everyone in the knit along. Thanks. Bye.